And I guess I want to thank everybody for coming. I appreciate you spending the time and sitting in the meeting. Robert? And we're a seat short here. I wanted Vince to sit up here at the table too. Oh.
I don't want to sit by boss.
Man.
We didn't either.
First, yeah, obviously. I wanted to again remind everybody that you all signed in when you came. So if we did have a fire alarm or something like that, please remember not to run off, because we're going to try to check you off on that sheet. So if we don't check you off on the sheet, then the fire department has to look for you. And if the building truly is burning, we don't want them to have to come back in here and look for somebody who's not here. Other thing is, if you don't all remember, the restrooms are just down the hallway right by the elevator. Just go out the door and to the left. Cell phones, speaking of my own, if you put them on vibrate, please, so they do not disrupt the meeting. And let's see, and if everybody, at least up at the table, make sure you please introduce yourselves before you speak, so Ashton can get your name down in the minutes and make you famous so you live on in infamy.
I apologize to Ashton right off the start, I never remember.
And let's see, with that, we'll go around and we'll do roll call to make sure we have quorum. So I'm just going to, I actually haven't written down this time, Ken, so I don't have to remember them. John Boltz. Here. Dave Burns. Here. Lynn Evans.
Yes.
Jimmy Fox.
Yes, sir.
Ken Frederick.
Here.
Philip Hemminghaus.
Here.
Will Rousseau.
I'll be here.
Kirk Smith.
Here.
Okay, we definitely have a quorum, so we'll continue on. You all hopefully took the handouts when you came in out in the audience. If not, there's handouts sitting at the table there. I wanted to remind everybody you can sign up for the listserv, but Henry pointed out to me that people didn't get an email on this one. And if you've signed up for the listserv, you're supposed to be getting an email when we get stuff up there, and you didn't get them, so I apologize. I don't know why that happened. I will go back and check with our IT folks and find out why everybody didn't get an email on this. So, but anyway, go on the website, go to the task force, go to the meetings, and you can sign up if you currently aren't registered to receive email notifications. If it does work, you will be getting emails. Okay, to let you know. I wanted to talk about a couple things that we are doing, and some information that we've obtained. Criminal background reviews, as Kirk brought up at the last meeting, the criminal background reviews have always been a difficult area from the standpoint that you have people who have had a criminal background and they come in, and we kind of ask them to review what's happened in the past, and we try to look at where they're going in the future. And I've been sitting in on these since OPM has moved over here, just to get a flavor for it again, to see how it's all going. And I guess there's two things we'll talk about. I'm going to have Vince talk about the handout that was part of this, and then I want to talk about what our current process is right now. We've been going through, and I've sat through several of these now, and we found people that perhaps we don't like. They don't give us a warm, fuzzy feeling. But if they have not had any run-ins with the law for several years, what basis would we have to deny them a license? And so we've been approving these people for coming in. And so what we've done is we've changed how we're doing the reviews now. And basically, if somebody's had a clean record for 3 years, we're approving them. So Robert is... people are still looking at them. I think, Robert, my conversation was, we need to continue to look at them. So if there's somebody that's a mass murderer and something like that, but otherwise, if they've been clean for 3 years, we've been approving them. So Robert, did I forget anything on that?
No, we still gather the information. People are still required to disclose. We still, like I said, we still do gather information. We're just not doing the interview process. Jack was delegated to me to review them if there's anything controversial, and make sure that I share it with Jack and determine whether or not we do need to do something.
It's a big time drain on us to set up this committee, to sit down and review these things, have these people come in and rehash what we're looking at on paper, and then try to assess that they're a good person going forward. You know, I mean, and that's, you know, bring out your dice and throw them. So, go ahead, Ken.
Ken Frederick, I'm just curious, is there a matrix set up still, so if it is a violent felony that they're convicted of, whether it was 3 years ago or 10 years ago, that that's considered? There's certain violations that I would be very concerned about.
There is a, what is, and that's how much you paper that.
We have a list. What we do is applicants with a felony, all felonies are reviewed. Whether or not they come in for an interview, it's going to be a matter of whether or not they meet that 3-year criteria. But they're all reviewed. All of the felonies are reviewed. We have a list of misdemeanors involving moral character and misdemeanors that we don't consider to involve moral character. And then there's obviously there are offenses that appear on the list. If it doesn't appear on the list, either one, we ask that you disclose it for us to review. If it appears on the list of something to disclose, we want you to disclose it. If it's something that appears on the list that's not to disclose, and those things are typically traffic, jaywalking, things that typically are considered not a moral character issue, then they're not required to disclose. We'll still get the information on the background investigations, we'll still make a determination, but it's not something where we're going to call everybody in, you know, you had a ticket, we're not going to tell you after that.
And I did,
Oh, go ahead.
I guess, you know, I didn't want to have a big discussion about this, but what I wanted to do, I think this is probably another one of those, I sent out 2 things talking about the qualifying party and the TARF was 2 things that we want to talk about. I think this is an additional one that we will probably want to talk about at some point in time to decide how we want to deal with this. But I didn't want to inform everybody about how we're doing it. I mean, it takes a lot of time, and you know, I've looked at these. If they're more than 3 years out, we're not going to go into a hearing and win. If somebody's shown that they've been clean for 3 years, you know, how do we go into a hearing and say, well, we're not going to license this person? They've served their time. They've served their debt to society. So.
Jack, just a quick question. Have we ever turned down an application for this?
Over the years, I believe they have.
Yes, we have. Yeah, we have. I don't think we have it on the snapshots for this fiscal year, but the previous fiscal years, I want to say in last fiscal year, I think there were 5 or 6 that were denied based on, and a lot of things, one of the things also that we do consider is if you indicate that you haven't had anything on your background, or when we ask the question, have you ever been convicted of a misdemeanor involving moral character or any felony, you mark no, and we get a background investigation that comes back and says yes you have, that's definitely a contention for us to review the application, and that's grounds enough for the denial there.
Kirk,
In the past, we have hired a couple of felon convictions, but they were put on a probation program. Are we going to maintain that or not? No. They have to come before the board occasionally.
Well, that actually, when I sat on board, what were we called? Commission many years ago, that was one of the things that they started actually when I was there, and I think it got to be so much work again to keep track of these people and everything like that that we dropped that. And again, it's one of those things that I've said in the past is as a company hiring somebody who's got that criminal conviction, I think that's something that you need to make sure that they're kept track of that way. So, but again, we'll add that to the list of things, you know, the bigger item discussion list that we need to talk about. License renewal reminder, and I'll ask Robert just to.
We are going to be sending out the qualifying party and business license renewal applications. They anticipate them being mailed out no later than October 28th. Renewing fee will open on November 1st, and it will run through at the normal rate until January 1st. And January 1st, late fees kick in, and those will go through January 30th. After that, license is gone.
And again, this is informational things. I want to keep everybody informed. Please renew. Please renew.
On time.
On time. I mean,
That's
it's just,
business as usual.
it is business as usual, but we want folks to know about it, and those are the things I still get calls on, and people saying, well, I did this, and everybody's got every excuse under the book, or under the sun, why things didn't happen. So,
Quick question, Jack. Sorry.
Yes.
Kirk Smith. For the Department of Ag, are all of your different licenses renewed at the same time, same calendar time period?
Are they?
Yes. The reason I'm asking is, pest management, we have two different time frames. I don't see the necessity for that. Why don't we just line it within the same time frame? Maybe for future discussion.
It's just, it might be a future discussion. I think it's a workload issue, you know, but,
Yeah. Okay.
that, we can discuss it as we do deal with that, so.
All right.
And I forgot, I apologize, Vince, criminal background information, at the last meeting, remember when we were talking about this, I had asked Vince to do some research on this, and so he did, and that was one of the handouts that you guys got, and it looks like this, and it's got this on the back of it, so it's front and back document. So Vince, do you want to just kind of do a quick review of what you did? And
Right, yeah. Essentially, the individuals that well, let's digress a bit. At our last meeting, the discussion was the validity of even having background checks within the OPM organization. What I decided to do was to contact the members of ASPRO, the Association for Structural Pest Control Regulatory Officials, which is an organization comprised of industry members around the country. And basically, that organization serves many purposes. One, to provide information. All the state reps together meet, they discuss what they're doing versus what we're doing to see how we can just make better government. And essentially, I created a chart based upon the individuals of ASPRO of whom I had communications with. And you can see here by the chart that when it comes to background checks, out of the 14 state reps that I contacted, only 3 of them actually performed background checks in connection with obtaining a license. Of interest to me was number 8, the associate director there for the Department of Agriculture there in Dakota. I found his comment to be very interesting. May not necessarily agree with it, but it's very interesting.
so, thank you. I wanted to make sure folks saw that. And the other part of that was the other column was the tarps, right? You asked about the tarps. Okay.
Vince,
Yes.
Phil Hemminghouse, did they have a feeling when you talked to them about this, were they gonna go to, with the way Homeland Security and all that other stuff, are they gonna, you think they're gonna change this to all, make them all yes?
Great question, Phil. The majority of them stated no. They stated the primary concern of almost everyone here was they didn't want to burden the industry with additional costs, or they didn't have it within their budget. But the majority were primarily concerned about citizenship. Yeah, so
Legal lack of.
Exactly. They all requested evidence of citizenship, but they weren't really concerned with the issue of background fingerprinting, especially New York. They were very adamant against it. I guess the economy is so bad in New York, they had stated that it would cost an additional $50 per application just for them to perform that background check.
Just to be clear, there's legal residency, right?
Yes.
Legal
Yes.
residency, I don't think it was citizenship, it's legal residency. Okay? All right. Let's see. And then the next item on the agenda was agency educational courses. And again, there was discussion about this at the last meeting. And so I asked, again, Vince, if he wouldn't put together a little bit of information on the educational courses that have been offered by the agency. You got a handout on that again, front and back. And this is the courses that, and it says scheduled, you know, we actually, the one we've had because it passed that date, but it just gives you an idea of the courses that are upcoming. It gives you an overview of how many, if you look on the back of the page, I think the things that I'd like to highlight is there are over 7,000 license holders, and they touched about approximately 6% of the license holders in Arizona. And several of those were through that, what was that course called?
SEDC. What's the World Continuing Education Conference in Nashville?
Yeah.
Say that again.
What he said.
It's the World Continuing Education Conference in Nashville.
They used to have they had, for a couple of years, they had a conference every year, and they offered a lot of continuing education courses, and we're not doing that. And so again, that was 165 of these people that were touched through the OPM.
Right.
Yes.
Sorry, Jack, just so you know, but ACPPO is putting that conference on
Okay.
this year.
Again, that's their conference, and I just wanted, I think what the reason I'm bringing this up is because one of the things was concern over the Office of Pest Management competing for continuing education credits with industry, and I just wanted to point out, reality, you can make a decision whether we're competing unfairly or not, but it was approximately 6% of the license holders, and the fact that we're not going to do the SCECE thing again, it's going to reduce that number even more. So my point being that we are limiting what we're doing, and as the first page points out, we really are covering laws, things that pertain to what we do, and so we will continue to do that. So if anybody has questions, I wanted to provide this opportunity. Go ahead, Nick.
You're right, and as we discussed, we only offer 4 classes a year.
Yeah, moving forward, that's what we're going with. Okay? All right. Any questions on any of that stuff? Anyone? Go ahead, John.
Where are the classes? Are they all here in Phoenix? Are they spread around the state?
Yeah, actually, if you look at the front of that front page,
This is all the one.
yes.
Yeah.
Okay. And they will continue to be around the state. Just like with the ag, we hold 3 courses across the state at different locations as well to try to provide some level of convenience for the operators.
Hey, Jack.
Yeah,
Glenn Evans. This one in Prescott, you have $48, and all the rest of them free. You're picking on the guys in Prescott unnecessarily.
They're all 48 bucks. I apologize, but they're all 48 bucks.
Oh,
Thank you. I appreciate you asking. That's a good clarification. It's $48 to attend this. Any other questions?
exactly.
And that is one of the things the Department of Agriculture, we cannot charge for the continuing education courses, because we don't have that authority. Okay. Let's see. I think the next thing we will move back into is kind of looking at the statute under OPM and under the ADA and how they fit. And I didn't do nearly as good a job as Casey, but what you have is this handout now. Okay. And maybe somebody did, somebody didn't. If you have your OPM laws along with you and Department of Ag laws.
I'll share this.
Which laws do you want?
Well, I guess what I wanted to do is, I'm just going to point this out generally. The Department of Agriculture's authority is very generic, and there's a couple that I wanted to point out. It's under 363. It says the director shall adopt rules, and it says to prescribe measures to control, monitor, inspect, and govern pesticide use. And that's pretty generic. And then the other one was kind of, because it seemed like it applied to a lot, is prescribe appropriate record-keeping and reporting requirements regarding pesticide use. So that's, again, I spoke about this previously, is we can regulate pesticide use, I think, quite a bit, but some of the stuff in the OPM that doesn't specifically deal with pesticide use is where we are probably lacking. So now if we go in and we look at the OPM laws, okay, and I just continued on from where we were at the last meeting, because we got through, I made you guys sit here for how many hours?
5 or 6.
Yeah, what?
Was it that long?
That was limited.
It only felt I think it was about just about 3 hours. It was almost 3 hours. So,
You did.
So we're gonna start out with 2305. And if you look at the sheet, what I've got is fees and funds. This is one where it specifically sets up a fund, and then 2317 is fees again, and that's in our law. We go through and we list out our license holders and the fees prescribed for them, and they have exactly the same thing here in the OPM law. And so I think those are things that we would probably want to make sure that we have that authority written somewhere. So go ahead, Ken.
Oh, no, go ahead.
Okay?
I was just gonna ask you a question. It says here, I'm sorry, Ken Frederick, 322317 under fees in the OPM law, it actually specifically says how much each one can be renewed for. We don't want that law, do we?
What, I'm gonna tell you, my view is, if it's in law, I would like to have it set at a high enough level so there was room to work there. So we'd have to go through the rule process, but in the Department of Agriculture law, it does exactly the same thing. It sets a certain level. And that's why, over the past couple of years, the Department of Agriculture and OPM has gone through this process of that special rule thing to raise the fees. That's the legislature's way of getting around, because otherwise they have to have the 2/3, anytime they're increasing a fee or a tax or something like that. If they give the agency authority, then it's our issue and not the legislature's. So I think, they would do how they would do so they could deal with it. So that might mean that there wouldn't be a fee associated with it.
I mean, if the authority is given to the director to charge fees, I can understand that. And then in the rules, you would define more of the fees.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
Correct. The drawback would be that industry is giving a government agency authority to charge fees. We try hard to work with industry, but industry has got, there's always a distrust of government, and I understand that. Okay? Go ahead, Lynn.
Jack, what is the pest management fund, and why does it need an exemption?
Well, it's similar to our pesticide, feed, fertilizer funds. It's the fund where the money is deposited, and ours has that same exemption. It's what is it, from lapsing appropriation or something like that? It means that. Well, Casey, can you explain what the lapsing appropriation part of that means? Or go ahead.
Yeah, I think it just means at the end of the fiscal year that you can keep the money that's still in there, it does not have to go to the
So,
It doesn't roll into the general fund.
So if you don't spend it, it doesn't even lose it.
That's right.
and that's important. That's
And this is what they call, we'll do so, a 90-10, right?
correct.
Yeah, okay.
We Department of Agriculture used to be 90-10 as well. We changed that. Started back when we supported industry. Go ahead.
Just wanted to add too that all revenue coming into the department has to be assigned to a specific fund. If it's not, then it goes to the general fund.
So it flows through the department into the general fund if it's not designated.
That's right.
The state general fund?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
It's an important thing you consider. That was a good clarifier. And just if I might throw out, since you asked the 90-10 question, well, you probably remember. When it used to, the Department of Agriculture, we had 90-10 funds as well, the feed, fertilizer, pesticide, several of these were 90-10 funds. And the purpose of the 10% was because we received DOA services, some of that dealing with HR and things like that. But the Department of Agriculture actually had its own HR, legal services and things like that. So again, that's why with industry support, we went to the legislature and got those funds changed to just straight funds because we were providing those services. DOA was not providing those services.
Would it make sense to eliminate the 90-10 portion of this, as we're going through it? Why pay a tax to the state? They're gonna take it if they need it anyway.
This,
There you go.
If the Office of Pest Management is to become part of the Department of Agriculture, the
Exactly.
Department of Agriculture, that would be my view of the world as well, yes.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, continuing down, the next one is 2308, is the one that I had, and that deals with joint responsibility. And, currently we really don't have something that covers that in our law that would give us somebody responsible for somebody else. In our law, the certified applicator is the responsible person other than, actually the certified applicator is responsible for their actions. So we really don't have this joint responsibility where the qualifying party or I think in some locations, actually a certified applicator is made in charge to ensure that people are trained, equipped, and branch offices. So, any questions on that? Go ahead, Kurt.
It kind of touches on this a little bit. Maybe Vince, would you explain how do we go to a licensed applicator versus the old certified applicator? And what's the difference between the distinction between the two?
Licensed applicator and certified.
Because the Department of Ag goes by certified applicator. So if we're going to bring continuity to the two departments, we should just eliminate licensed applicator.
There is no difference. Our previous administrator liked the word licensed better than certified. However, when you look across the country, it's, even for ASPRO, it's associated, the Association of Structural Pest Control,
Association of Structural Pest Control, Special Control
Regulatory Officials.
APCO, that's the Association.
That one stay with the acronym.
Association.
We're going to be quizzed.
No, the terms are one and the same. The terms are one and the same. Certified
Because
applicator.
That's a good comment, we would want to do that.
Because most label language is certified applicator.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. Next I have is 2311, and what I had. Oh, I guess, and actually, Casey, this might be a question of, we have authority under our law who we regulate, but this is kind of giving the exemptions of who isn't regulated, and I think we would probably need to have something like that in our laws as well. And there's several of them listed within the section of the OPM law, so again, this was my review of the whole thing.
Oh, sorry, Jack.
Yeah.
Are we going to have a chance to go over this whole thing in the future?
Yes.
That's a pretty hot topic with the landscapers and minimum qualifications and everything else.
Okay, and actually, this is, I think about these things a lot, and when you're out digging holes in your backyard and stuff like that, you think about stuff like this. And this was my view of all this. I'm hoping we can do is we can get through this, and there are some these things that are hot topics, but I think where the rubber's going to hit the road is when we get through this, if we can start drafting what we would see as the things we need to deal with in both, and as I talked about before, we have to deal with the laws, and I spoke about the ag folks aren't going to want to open up our law to do this, but there's going to have to be some laws that are going to have to be adopted. And then there's some rules that go along with this, and I think as we go through those things, I think that's where we'll start having some discussions about this beyond the TARF, the qualifying party, and the criminal background checks, which I think we need to have a meeting just to talk about those, because that's fairly, and if we get through really quick today, we can start. So, okay. I mean, that was kind of, and disagree with me. I mean, anybody disagree. That was kind of how I was thinking, is we kind of go through this general discussion, thinking what fits, what doesn't fit. As we finally start putting things together, I think it will all come together and we can have some good discussions about that. Does that work for folks? Okay? All right, cool, thank you. And I also had 2321 as part of that. And what were the exemptions that I had over there?
Disciplinary actions?
No, I had
It went from 2311 to
2321, which is disciplinary actions, and where was I?
from it.
Maybe it was, maybe,
I think it's discipline to exempt, for those that are exempt.
yeah,
They're not
that,
exemption.
okay,
They
that,
are violate the exemption.
Your section C, you got. Oh, never mind.
this made perfect sense to me as I put this together.
Must have dug the wrong hole in this one.
Stayed out in the sun too long.
What are you burying in all this?
As children in college.
Page 6.
The problem is there's two different set of exemptions.
Robert, what did you say?
In 2321, it talks about basically what the punishment would be for someone who actually violates the exemption. I think part of that was, I think having a person supervising more than one licensed applicator.
Okay. That might have been it, I apologize.
2311, section B, it's all about the person who present pursuant to some section, et cetera, et cetera.
Go ahead, Casey.
I'm just throwing out a guess, maybe you just transpose some numbers, maybe in 2312.
It's two exemptions.
Refer several places in 2312 for unlicensed employees.
That could be, and I apologize, I'll just cross out 2321. I don't remember what I was talking about. Again, it will hit the road when we get this.
That's all that one.
Yeah, that's what, just cross it out, cross it out.
Thanks, Case.
Casey just
Go ahead.
saved us
Well, if I could say something about 2321, it only applies to license holders. So I don't know if that's what you're thinking about.
Maybe we have, that is one of the things that we need to ensure that we, maybe we've got it covered. Under Department of Agriculture law, we have taken action against homeowners in the past because OPM has had some problems because people are unlicensed. And so the Department of Agriculture, we've taken action against homeowners if they've gone out and done something. And we want to ensure that we can continue to do that. And maybe it would be appropriate to put it under OPM law, give them that general authority as well. Because we don't want homeowners being able to go out and spray their neighbor's oleanders and get away with it. I like oleanders.
We need to spray the neighbors all years.
Trying to kill them, yes. They don't die easy. So, go ahead, Henry.
Henry Schneider, National Foundation. I believe that exemption was there specifically for the homeowner or the property owner to spray their own property. And it obviously restricts it to only the parts that they own. If they're spraying in the neighbor's yard, then they don't own the neighbor's yard. So the exemption clearly would not apply in that case.
Okay. Okay, the next one I've got, and I've got several sections written down here, it's just that whole background criminal investigation stuff. We're going to have a discussion about that at some point in time, but it's in several sections: the applicator, the qualifying party, business licensee. So these are all the sections that deal with all that stuff. Okay. 2314. We're going to have discussions about this as well. I realize at some point in time, and let me, as I thought about this one as well, I guess this was my thought, and I'm not trying to be negative toward, or I've said this previously. I said the qualifying party is like a super applicator. And, you know, you know, and I guess what I kept thinking is we're talking, we could be talking semantics. You know, whether they're called a qualifying party or they're calling a certified applicator. You know, maybe they're, you know, there's going to be a whole lot of discussion dealing with qualifying party and the time and all that kind of stuff. But I just, as I was sitting here thinking about it, it's, you know, maybe they are a certified applicator. I mean, they can go out and apply pesticides. They can you know, do everything that a certified applicator can do. The only thing they're called a qualifying party. And you know, maybe we just need to designate a qualifying party or a responsible individual or something like that. If we called them a certified applicator, but they were the responsible party, you know, I'm just thinking of I realize I'm looking at this from the government side of things, trying to make things as simple for the regulated community out there as well. So you come in, you get a certified applicator, and you know, and I know there's a whole lot of discussion going on that will go on with that. But I put in reference our deal that deals with commercial certification. So anyway, that's one of those areas that we're going to have some discussion about, and we have to decide whether we want to do that again or not. Henry.
Henry Schneider. Again, just to expand that a little bit, I realize this might not be the best opportunity to talk about it in great detail, but you keep talking about the responsible party. From my perspective as a business owner, for instance, if you have a corporate entity, you designate a person that represents that corporation to be sued, and any lawsuits that start address the person who is assigned to that corporation. You might not be eventually the person who actually gets tasked with it, but when you deliver the lawsuit, there is the responsible party, and all corporate entities have that. And so if you're, I'm trying to make sure that I understand when you say responsible party, are you talking about responsible party at a corporate level, or could be a, you know, whether it's a sole proprietor or partnership or whatever, those things are saying, or are you talking about someone who's responsible for actually knowing how to apply pesticides? And I think all that can be covered under an applicator's license all by itself, and that those two things can be totally divorced.
I guess my perspective was from the applicator's point of view, who's responsible for those pesticide applications is the way I was looking at it.
In which case, the applicator should always be responsible, because they're the ones that hold the license and the knowledge.
Yeah. Go ahead, Dave.
I think you have two distinctly different things here.
Okay.
I'm not trying to address Henry's issue, but a corporation is a corporation. They don't have a responsible party. A corporation is a corporation. Okay. In this, a qualifying party is the person that is responsible for the pesticide side of business in the company, whether it's a corporation or a sole proprietorship or a limited partnership. The qualifying party was designed as the person, the single individual that takes responsibility for all of the pesticide type applications, record keeping, training, all those things that this law requires you to do. That person is the person that the agency says, you have that responsibility. If it fails, we're holding you responsible for that responsibility. That's really what it's for. It really isn't about the ability to apply pesticides. It's about the responsibility for the actions of the business revolving around pesticides.
Jimmy Fox. And just to clarify, but OPM, they have to have a separate business license to apply or store pesticides. So that's where some of this argument comes up. You already have to have a separate business license for this. Why is a qualifying party license not part of that? And so there's some gray area there, and a lot of people want to know why can that not be one and the same, if indeed you have to have a separate business license anyway.
I think that they have to have a QP in order to get the business license. That's designating the responsible person.
Right.
And go ahead,
Dave Burns, and you're right. The two tend to be fairly synonymous. The distinction comes where a person can get a business license by finding someone else to be the qualifying party and marry the two up. I think they're a lot more synonymous than we want to just say. They really are, or can be, one and the same, but they are distinctly different from that of an applicator license or a certified applicator, but he's responsible.
Which is why this all becomes part of a greater concept.
Go ahead, John.
Jeff, last meeting we discussed it a little bit, and that was one of the other things that we were going to look at, other states, as far as hours threshold and whatnot. We discussed that briefly. Was that information gathered at all?
No, that was not gathered yet, and I think we'll have that when we have that bigger discussion about this whole thing to see what's going on. Okay. Thanks for the reminder. I didn't have that on my list either. I just had the two, so thank you. Appreciate that. Okay. Anything else? Okay. All right. Disciplinary. I went on to there. I've got 2221. I'm sure I'm right on this one. And there were a couple things in there that the couple that I pointed out, making a fraudulent statement or intentional misrepresentation in connection with wood treatment proposal. Again, that was something that's really kind of unique that we didn't have. We have a whole lot of stuff dealing with record keeping. I had the money issue. Oh, they have the ability to impose a penalty of $1,000. Currently, in the Department of Agriculture, it's $500. So there's a difference there. Then I had
Jack, just clarification on that civil penalty.
Yes.
In your Department of Ag, is that targeted towards the applicator itself? Or can you go after the responsible for the business owner?
We go after, it depends on the case, but we will go after the business licensee, or we will go after the certified applicator. And if it's a restricted use pesticide, and a certified applicator is applying it, we're going after the certified applicator.
Plus the distributor.
If the guy's not certified,
Right.
yes, then we go after the person who sold it as well. But otherwise, if it's under a business licensee, we will go after the commercial applicator, or the custom applicator, that's like our business license. Okay? Go ahead.
Anthony Banks, if it's dealing with a political subdivision and you have a licensed certified applicator working for that school, let's say for instance, and that certified applicator is applying a restricted use product, who would you go after then? Since the political subdivision does not have to have a business license.
Well, or a QP, we would certainly go after that certified applicator.
He's not supposed to, even has the authority to write records though. He's not supposed to keep records, a certified applicator. At a political subdivision, it's up to the business license holder or the qualifying party, be it, to keep and maintain license records, application records.
A political subdivision doesn't have those, no?
That is correct. There is no requirement for a political subdivision to maintain records because the way that our statutes were written, we put that responsibility on those that hold a business license. So that's where there may be a flaw in our rules or statutes, because if a person works for the city of Phoenix and they're treating low-income homes, what happens to those records? Because there's nothing in rule or statute that requires a political subdivision to maintain those records.
But if they misapply a pesticide?
If they misapply a pesticide, we would hold the licensed applicator responsible. However, we may or may not have a difficult time finding those records because the applicator may turn them into his boss, but the boss isn't a business license holder, so where are those records?
Well, we're certainly going to ask for them.
Freedom of information.
Again, I'm just going to tell you, I have a hard time letting somebody get by with something if they know they've done wrong. And, that's why I look at this homeowner, whether they were licensed or they weren't licensed, we're going to try to go after them. And if it doesn't work under the Office of Pest Management Authority, we could go after them under the Department of Agriculture Authority if the case were referred over, which is fairly easy to do now. Because, you know, an applicator is responsible for applying that pesticide properly. And if we can, document that the pesticide was misapplied, we're gonna go after that applicator.
Yeah, but the applicator is not responsible for, Anthony Banks, the applicator is not responsible for maintaining the record. He can make a record, but he can take the record and throw it anywhere, because he's not responsible for maintaining that record, according to law right now.
But isn't that something that we could change?
Again, if it's a restricted use pesticide,
Right.
you have to keep those records. There's federal law that says you have to keep records.
An applicator makes the record, but he does not have to maintain the record. The applicator does not have that
I would disagree with you.
responsibility.
Under federal law, you have to keep that for 2 years. Under federal law. So we would go after you anyway. I mean, the records are.
Let's see what you're saying. You're saying it doesn't.
We need to fix it. We need to make sure we fix
it. It doesn't require it. But
yes.
Again, that's what we're here for, is to synchronize.
So we'll need to fix that. Thank you.
And Andy's right, because I work for whatever subdivision applies a lot of chemicals. But yeah, we need to address this issue, because it needs to be resolved.
Well, you keep your records, don't you?
We do.
I have a point of clarification that I need.
1 second.
Hold that
Take-
back.
There we go. Seriously? Am I making this? I'm sorry. Okay. Go ahead.
Dave Burns, this is probably for Casey. In a case where you have a political subdivision who by law is exempt from licensing, does a state agency have an action against another? Is there another form of going after a political subdivision such as in Cook County? Is there another vehicle or action?
There would have to be some law somewhere that would give us an authority to do it, so. In the absence of any law in that regard, no, we wouldn't be able to go up to the city or the county.
As a practical, we tried to get DOT responsible for irresponsible spraying on right-of-ways, and they've thumbed their nose. Good luck with that.
Were you able to pin the applicator,
Sure.
that was working for?
Yeah, it was DOT did it. Sprayed phenoxine on cotton, and they tell you, sorry boys, you're
They've been doing that for years.
Yeah.
But they haven't been. What are they? I guess,
You went after.
well, in that situation, yeah, we did.
There was an independent contractor, John, there was an independent contractor working for DOT, wasn't there? It wasn't DOT themselves.
This was DOT.
Anyway, thank you. Well, that's a good point. We'll make sure we get that. So those are the ones that I had in the disciplinary stuff that I didn't think really fit under our general authorities, okay? Next one is wood destroying insect inspection report. We don't have anything like that at all. Then we have the fungi inspection report. Do we even have a category that goes along with that? Yeah?
Yeah, we do have one. We were planning on getting rid of it because it merely all it states is that there are conditions conducive. It's not saying that there's any evidence of, it's just conditions conducive. And we figured BTR can do that better than we do. Since they have a mediation and inspection board as well.
We do it better.
BTR, Board of Technical Registration. They register mobile mediation, mobile inspectors and stuff. So what our industry is doing is they're saying, oh, there's condition conducive. I mean, to get potential for, even if they can see it, they're not allowed to identify it. All they can say is there's a condition conducive to it.
So to treat a mold situation, then would that be just under the general category?
It's actually Board of Technical Registration. It's actually, we don't have a treatment category.
No, I'm actually somebody going out and spraying pesticides to control mold.
We don't have anyone, that's not under our jurisdiction. That's actually under the Board of Technical Registration.
Well, I don't think that's right, is it? I mean, from the standpoint of So they're regulating pesticide use?
They're regulating mold remediation. Again, I don't know if anybody's out there applying pesticide for mold, I don't know.
I would think they'd be using an antimicrobial. I guess the issue is, do we want all antimicrobials should be under our agency?
I never heard of this board, where, never had it.
But Vince Herx, you also have an antimicrobial category, which is the B6, I believe.
Right, but yet we haven't had, we've never had an example.
Maybe this could fall under that.
That sounds like.
Yeah, that category, there was a couple different, I heard a couple different genuses for that category. One was that it was for potential of pool guys. And specifically those that use chlorine gas. Apparently it never came to fruition, and there was never an exam created for it, and there wasn't a need to see it, so it's under our law, but we have nothing for it, and no one has it, we never issued it. The other thing was again for those who use antimicrobials, like disinfectants. And then the question was, do we really want that as well? And so that's the question. Yeah, you're looking at, going that close to using myself.
Interesting. What is this technical regulation?
It's Board of Contractors, isn't it?
No, it's Board of Technical Registration. It's a separate state agency that they do home inspectors, they license home inspectors, they do engineers, they guys who do mobile remediation. That's their side.
I think even as far as people cleaning up bloodborne pathogens, those people are all BTR.
That's all in that same section of law, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay. There's a whole list of them.
There's a lot of people that quote are licensed under BTR. They don't really, it's kind of a weird group. We have home inspectors too, so I'm under there as well. They very small, they don't do a lot, there's not a lot of law, but there's a whole lot of people that have to go over there for licensing.
So is it a renewal of licensing every year type thing? It is, okay. So,
Henry Schneider. The issue that you get into as soon as you start doing microbial licensing, and call it pest control, is all the pool guys, all the maids, anybody that might work in a hospital, all that suddenly blossoms up, and I don't know that I would want the Structural Pest Control Commission or the Department of Ag, for that matter, trying to regulate maids and pool guys on any kind of regular basis.
well, I guess we're doing it now. Go ahead.
Phil, let me ask. But if you're under the BTR, like you say, is there loopholes that if you're under that, you could spray stuff that because you're under a BTR that you're covered
I guess
in?
that was kind of my issue.
I'm just with that if they're that, they don't have to be, licensed on the pesticides. If they can, treat for antimicrobial, you could call it a lot of stuff. There's,
Are they using a federally licensed product?
They're using it, yes.
They're using fungicide.
I think when you, Dave Burns, I think when you talk about specifically mold remediation, there's a lot of products that have federal registration labels that those companies use. Those companies tend not to be pest control companies. They really are not involved in the structural pest control business. At least I don't know of very many. I mean, as a larger company, we actually looked into it and said, there's not enough market there for us to mess with. It tends to be mostly insurance business, house floods. Somebody's got to take care of it. It has to do with insurance. When you start talking with some of the pathogen problems, those have federal guidelines on what you got to do with it, how you got to clean it up, how you got to handle it, hazardous materials. Same with mold, how you handle hazardous materials. There's a whole section of laws on that.
Did you want to say something?
I just wanted to interject with what Dave stated. We ran across a company whose sole purpose was to do cleanup, major cleanups in homes, hospitals, hotels. They were registered with the Register of Contractors, but yet they were using an antimicrobial product. Should they be under us? We didn't think so. It seems like just more government.
The one thing I guess that we don't want to lose focus of, there's a whole lot of stuff, like Henry said, you guys have said, there's a whole lot of stuff that, you know, is way out there that I can use in my house, and you guys can all use in your house, do we want to regulate all that kind of stuff. I think what was driving this originally, again, as Robert said, was they were looking at the chlorine gas, you know, it's a pressurized container being shot into pools, and they were looking at making that a restricted use pesticide, and I think we want to make sure that if there's something that came along that fell into that category, we need to jump into that. I mean, we are the pesticide regulatory folks, and if it's a restricted use product, there's nobody else out there that certifies folks. If they didn't do it, they would have nowhere else to go. And so that's where I think we don't want to lose focus of that, of what could come as well. So I'm not sure that we want to eliminate the category, but we may not use the category.
Yeah, Dave Burns, if I may make a suggestion. A lot of times it's as simple as creating a position statement that says, our goal in this category is to address restricted use gases that may be governed by the EPA.
I'd say restricted use products.
Yeah, and not necessarily be in the regulation of antimicrobials or antibacterial uses of product.
Okay.
And I think history has shown that's probably where, at least from the structural side, there was failure, because you have this broad law that somebody could go, oh, hey, they're actually under us. Well, we should do something with that. I think, to be safe, up front you have a position statement that says, we're not looking for those people. It's not what we do.
Okay, all right, thank you. Anything else with that? Okay, then the last one that I had written down was 2329, and this is, Casey, this is kind of maybe more of a question to you, because we have injunctive relief, and I believe that we can go to court and get that, but the one 2329 was may similarly suspend without a formal hearing any license issues, blah, blah, blah. And that's something that I don't think we have any authority similar to that.
I actually believe this is in Title 40.
You do?
Double check, but I think
If it's an emergency, we could do it without going to hearing.
that covers all the.
Okay, okay, so then that one really it won't be an issue either. Thank you. Then I put two over on the right-hand side, and I put the schools, 2307. You know, we can regulate pesticide use. You know, we've got the general authority that can regulate pesticide use. This is the one area that is going to be very sensitive. We want to make sure that as we move forward with this, that this doesn't get lost. You know, I mean, not that it would get lost, but that we make it clear to everyone that this schools continue to be covered and protected. That's the important part of that. And then the last one, I got wood destroying treatment proposal. It's a wood destroying WDITP, wood destroying insect treatment proposal. There. Wood destroying insect treatment proposal. And I just kind of put that out there, and I think we covered that with that second one that I read, which was the prescribe appropriate record keeping requirements regarding pesticide use. That's, I think we could probably get it under there, but again, I wanted to make sure that that was put out there for everybody to see. So, with that, we're done. Yeah, we're not going to leave that early, guys. do I owe you time, Lynn?
That's Kurt.
Let's give me this look. Go ahead, Vince.
Did you want to add for the discipline 2304 D12 that states that the director could issue up to $1,000 for unlicensed activity? Because I don't think you folks have anything like that in your act.
2304, what did you say?
D12, D like all?
I had needed.
Oh.
that was one of those things that Casey had put in his, he had Jeff covered the general things, and I think, I just put it in that way as needed, so. Okay.
Quick question.
Yes.
Since you brought this thing up about civil penalties, are we going to also sit down and look at the matrix you're currently using for review?
Oh, we could do that.
Because that's something unique compared to ag, I'm sure.
I can't comment because I don't understand it well enough yet. I understand ags well, and I mean, it's fairly, we actually have ours laid out as rule as to how you go through, again, industry, when we went through this whole process, wanted to make sure that they understood it, so we actually have it in the rules. And I don't know that OPM is in rules right now.
No,
It's just,
not.
it's a general penalty authority, and so that might be something that, I know that Vince has a good handle on. This is how, and it's based on experience, you know, when we get into these situations, this is where it goes, so that might be of value to at least go through that, so you can kind of see how he works through that. Would that be of benefit to folks, do you think?
Sure. It's been a while since I've seen
Okay. I wasn't anticipating getting done through this that quickly. I guess what we're, you know, in mine we went through, we've made it through 3, but down at 6, I had this topic, go ahead, Casey, come on, listen up.
Well, maybe we have, I wasn't sure whether we actually, second bullet point, part 3, I know we did the first bullet point.
Criminal background reviews, how we're doing license, renewal, reminder on agency education courses. I think we've covered those, haven't we?
No, the second bullet point of 3.
Oh, I'm sorry. Oh.
I don't think we've done that, right?
You kept alluding to going back to it, so.
Oh, yeah. And actually, I didn't prepare anybody to come in to talk about this, but you guys actually had prepared, well, you guys hadn't prepared, but you had. When we've had discussions, we've had some good discussions about things we want to make sure that we do cover, and I hate to, I don't know if you guys are going to be in a position to really talk about those now or not. Do we want to talk about some of the licensing? One being the folks that aren't licensed, we haven't had regulatory authority, that was one of them. Are there other issues, I know, Robert, that we've...
I mean, I can go over some of the things that always kind of swam in my head that I'd like to see change. One of the things actually Dr. Smith brought up was actually going to a one-time-a-year time frame. Previously, we had a two-year time frame, and part of it was burden, the amount that, the amount of income into the office. The other part was actually funding. 2 times a year, we have basically a large amount of funds come in, and that covers us. So, during the winter, we have some that covers us until we get to the summer. In the summer, we have another renewal period that came in, and that covered us until we got to the following winter. And that's kind of how that cycle worked. I think we could get to a point where we would do all renewals, at least for the OPM side, it could be done at the same time of year. My preference, and I've spoken with some folks in the industry, would be the end of, would be basically May, when applicators, and that typically be just because the industry, from my understanding, is that's when they're the busiest. That's when they actually have the most of their income coming in as well, as opposed to when they're laying off folks at Christmas time because things have gotten slower. So I would actually like to see it move there. I think that our staff would be able to handle that.
And I'll throw in there, that would work with the Department of Agriculture because all ours come in at the end of the year. So from a workflow standpoint, I mean, we can throw resources behind that licensing and they can then throw resources behind our licensing timeframe, so.
Another confusion point too with the two time frame differences is when do the CEUs expire for a license and when do they expire for a qualifying party?
And that actually would be that would also solve that issue. That would solve that issue completely. There would be no question there because right now it's 13 13 months or one use per license. So for an applicator, it would be, you know, so you get it April 1st. It's good until April, you get it until May 31st the following year. Actually good until April 30th that year, unless they use it for their applicator and for their QP if they have it. So yeah, it can get convoluted. It actually does get convoluted for folks, especially if they're kind of getting in sporadically throughout the year. Going to one time a year, it's good from this point to this point, and after this point, it's no good. And that would also solve that issue. One of the other things that I'd like to see done is I'd like to see us reevaluate our late fees. I've never particularly been fond of our late fees. I would think they're beyond excessive. And so I'd like to see them go to something that is something that is what it's designed to do, is be a deterrent for being late and not necessarily being something that would actually put folks out of business if they didn't make the time frame.
Robert?
Yes.
And as far as in the Department of Ag, we don't have late fees for licensing. You just lose your license.
You have 30 days past to renew, and if you don't renew, you lose your license, which is the same as OPM.
Yeah,
basically late fee for those 30 days.
Yeah, 30 days you have a late fee. So there's that deterrent there who wants you to get it on time as opposed to being late. But if you're within that 30 days, if you're late, then you pay a late fee. After that, license is gone.
Yeah.
So you're right. It operates similar. The only thing is they have a fee associated with it. And I guess the important point to make here for everyone is that nobody can do business during that time when they have not renewed their license. But there's a penalty associated with open minutes. Go ahead, Dave.
Dave Burns. I just like to tell you, I would support the licensure, the license renewal being all at once. I have no problem with it. The only thing I would like to add is I think we're doing a huge disservice to the business license holder by not notifying them when a technician's license is not renewed, suspended, changed, whatever. We don't get that information, and we're responsible for that. It makes life really difficult when you have 200 technicians out there.
Do we, in all situations, we don't necessarily know that somebody works for somebody. Isn't there a spot in that?
That's the thing is there's no requirement right now at this point for employers to let us know who works for them, or when they don't work for them anymore. We would love for that information to be provided to us. However, we do put the license status of all of our businesses, qualifying parties, and applicators on our website. So, I mean, unfortunately, business licensing may have to go through and look up every person that works for them in order to find that out. But if they do register with us, then it is on their list of employees. And when you pull up your list of employees with us, it'll actually let you know in that section. It'll say it'll actually indicate whether if there's a license number there. It should also indicate their expiration date. If there's no license number there, I'm calling and asking somebody because
so
they're not licensed to expire.
People say they work for Burns Pest Control. Dave could go in and look and see those people under him. But if they don't, he'd actually have to go out and look for that person individually.
Yes.
Okay. So, good, thank you. Go ahead.
Dave Burns, I don't disagree that information is there. Also, we're pretty technologically advanced at OPM with the website. I don't have a problem if you allow us to maintain that information. What I'm getting at is when a person does something with their license, whether that's getting a new license, applying, you do have that information that they're working for you because it's on the application. It's just very difficult to maintain your records if you don't notify us of what goes on with that person, whether they're in limbo because fingerprints didn't come back or they forgot to bring in the right check. You wouldn't believe the stories we get. You guys are completely inept and it's all your fault.
Hey, those are fighting words.
You know, every day. You just can't figure it out. That's the story we get. We know it's different. You know, we know, and if you notify us, you know what? In most cases, we can fix that.
You know, it's funny because I'm just going to say because we actually had a couple people from your shop come in, and I asked that question at that time. I said, "Does Dave know about this?" I mean, I honestly did, and the response was, yeah, actually, they thought that we probably did know about it, so it's.
Well, and that's the thing is you have folks that we do know, you know, that we're familiar with, and they're like, yeah, I'm sure this person knows, or if I've got a question, I know, whereas I can call Sage and say, hey, are you aware of this, hey, you know, I've got a question on this, can you get this worked out for me? We have others, I've had guys come in full uniform, submit an application, and where it says employer, there's nothing.
Yeah.
No name, no number, no nothing. And so, I mean, I can't force them, and it's listed on there as optional, so I can't force them to say, hey, you need to put your employer on there, or I see it's on your shirt, you might put it on here, you know, that discretion's left up to them because there is no requirement.
Again, and I think the point that I make with this is, one of the things that we talked about is this change in this licensing structure. And again, if these folks had to provide that information, who they're working for, that could have then, again, allow us to deal with this layered, or not layered, what am I looking for? Hierarchy of licensing, if they had to do that, if we put something in there on that.
Is it now the time to change it?
Yes, it will be, yes, I just, well.
Regardless of what we do with qualifying party, if we move it more like a custom applicator on the ag side or whatever, that person has to operate under a custom applicator or for a political subdivision, right?
No, a person can be a certified applicator and not work for somebody.
They're not working.
Yeah.
They're not technically applying pesticides.
They
can hold a
again,
license.
they hold the license, they can't be in business of doing that. Did I see somebody raise?
Well, I was gonna ask the question, Henry Schneider. As long as I've got an applicator license, okay, this goes back to a broader collection of subjects that will have to be dealt with at some point in time. Why do I need to actually work for somebody else in order to apply? I'm licensed, I've got the application license, I've gone through all the training. Why do I have to work for somebody in order to apply pesticides?
Go ahead. No, go ahead, Dave.
I'm all over that.
You've got a dog in a fight.
Number one, you don't have the insurance and the certificates on file to show that the consumer is protected.
How do you know I don't have that?
You're exactly right. How do we know? So if you don't have it on file, you don't get flagged.
How do you know it's
It's
not?
the same rules I have to apply.
Well, I mean, if they're in my filing cabinet, I've got paperwork.
Fine, file them with the state, and then it's all clear. You've exempted yourself from inspections of normal record keeping because nobody has on file where you keep record because you're technically not a business, you're an applicator. It's two different things. Business and an applicator are not the same entities.
Phyllis,
What?
you had your hand up?
No.
Oh, were you ready for Henry? Okay.
Yeah, I was trying to get him.
Okay, thank you.
Jack,
Yes.
another point about licensing that's come up occasionally. Do you have something similar in ag? In OPM, for instance, I can put my license in inactive status, and it can stay that way forever?
I hate it.
Me too.
I hate it.
Are we gonna keep it or not?
Just so you know.
How do you feel about that, Jeff?
He thinks about that when he's digging holes in his backyard.
Let me tell you what my thought is. Maintain your license just like everybody. Why do we have to have an inactive status and an active status? You know, you have a license.
Right.
Maintain it.
Actually, the only difference between an active and an inactive, we'll say applicator, because I think what we're talking about, the certified applicator, is that you don't have to, actually fees are no different. The only thing difference is CE.
Yeah.
If you're inactive, you don't have to get CE. If you renew every year, you pay your fees every year, but you don't have to have CE. The active folks.
So you can go 15 years without any continuing education.
Yeah, then
Yes.
you reactivate it,
And then you go to
15 years behind.
Yeah, so if you go to reactivate it, you have to have 6 hours within the last 12 months, and
That makes no sense.
To answer your
That makes
question,
no sense at all.
we don't have that in
We do
agriculture.
not.
Yeah.
Your
It's-
license, your
has
license,
to
you
stay
maintain it.
active. So
Yeah.
if
You
you're
have a
out of
license,
business,
you
you're
don't.
out of business.
Good. Yeah. Check
Yeah.
them out.
That was an easy one.
So are we in agreement that we want that to go bye-bye? Is that how we're gonna work this process, or?
It appears around the table, I guess there's people in the audience as well.
No problem here.
Okay. And I realize this is a small section of people that are here, but go ahead, Henry.
Okay, just for clarification of your question, are we talking about simply eliminating inactive licenses?
Yes.
I certainly have no objection.
And just, and I'm not, just to give differing perspective, just so people understand. Henry, you're not in the pest control business, correct?
That's correct, I do property management.
You're a property manager.
But I do
okay?
have a vested interest as a result of that.
I just wanted folks to realize that he's not in the pest control industry, so there are differing perspectives. And I think, and Henry said something at a ASPO meeting that to me made a whole lot of sense, which was, you know, if we don't make it so difficult for people to be licensees, we can have people licensees. You know, and I think part of that was the $3,000 deal, but you know, if he's going, he's looking at it from a property management standpoint, treating the facilities that he operates in, you know, but if it wasn't so difficult, you know, he could get licensed, so that was, go ahead.
Just to continue on that particular subject, one of the things I've written up and what I would propose for your consideration is that a low overhead license, you know, whether it's like $35 or $45 or whatever, core requirements from the core manual, and you could take the people who are currently mostly exempted, and if it was inexpensive enough, I bet you could gather up, you know, maybe another 5,000 or 10,000 applicators out there, have them go through this core, which demonstrates that they know how to read the label, follow the label, be safe about the use of these pesticides, and license them for $40, $50 a year, and turn it into, you know, a revenue stream.
And I'm not trying to be pro or con on this. I just want people to realize there's differing perspectives that are coming into play here, and where people are coming from on this. Okay.
I'm sorry, Robert, just clarification. For the inactive status, we're only talking about the applicator and QP.
Actually, well, an applicator, we're trying to develop something for the qualifying party, because one of the things that's currently in our law is that it says that a qualifying party shall have an inactive license unless they are qualifying a business. So you have QPs out there that actually aren't actively qualifying a business, and their license is inactive. The law says it has to be. So we have to come up with something different for them. You know, I don't know if a different terminology or a different status for them, that you're not qualifying a business, but it's still a valid and current license. But I'm still strictly looking at applicators in this instance, because yeah, there's the only benefit that you get out of having an active license for an applicator, and with an applicator it's all or nothing. With qualifying parties, it's category specific, because you can be active, you may have six license categories, and you're only active in one, because that's what the company needs at that point in time. If they decide to expand it, you can activate the others, and that's all well and good. With an applicator, it's an all or nothing. Either it's your license is inactive, or it's active.
Other things that, go ahead.
In addition to things, at least for license I'm looking at, and I know this is conditioned for everybody, probably more than anyone, is the $3,000 for qualifying parties. I don't, me personally, speaking personally with myself, I don't like it at all. It doesn't make sense to me. We're going to ask you for experience. Why make you take a test? You make you take a test, why ask you for experience? Why do you have to go to your boss and get permission from them, basically, to get fired, and then, you know, to then try to come up with the money to get this qualifying party license, as opposed to saying, okay, you know what, I feel like qualified for it. If I can pass the test, I'm good. You know, and that's just my personal opinion on it.
Well, I tend to agree with Robert Smith, because having served on the commission previously, we ran into that problem all the time. The person trying to get the verifiable hours wouldn't get the cooperation of their ex-employer.
Yeah.
It was almost an act of God to get that information out of us.
Yeah, I know Robert's had that problem since he's been here, and we recently had somebody came in with, they came in to get this, and they said they had the experience, and we went through, Vince actually did the number crunching on it, and educating licensing staff, and there was no way we could come up with $3,000 for the guy. And so we're turning him down, and then he has the right to appeal and all that kind of stuff, so it's probably not.
Well, Russo, in agriculture, there's no experience required to get a certified applicator license, is there?
Right, and this is for the QP though. It's
I
just.
understand, yeah,
But-
which should go away too.
But if we're talking, the rule says 3,000 verifiable hours of practical experience. There's no definition of verifiable, there's no definition of practical experience.
It's
fair.
hard.
It's a huge barrier to entry.
It's hard. So, okay, thank you. Is there more?
Not at this moment.
Okay.
I mean, I got a good example of that problem. I've been running the pest control business for 32 years, pest and termite. if I wanted to get in to do a weed application, I can't legally get a qualifying party for weeds. I can finagle a way around it, but I don't like doing that kind of business because I don't have 3,000 hours of practical experience, but I know what a weed is and I know how to read a label and I can read the law. I still don't understand why I can't qualify. So I have to pay somebody else to use their license to do weed work.
See, and that's where I think, you know, we can look at, my view again, is we might be able to look at these differently. You know, there are things like that, you know, we don't have to have this massive, but if you're gonna have somebody going out and treating homes for termites and stuff like that, you know, should they have some level of practical experience?
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I'm gonna ask you folks around the table, but, you know, some of these, if you're gonna fumigate, you need to have practical experience. That's one I truly
In
believe.
someone's home.
Yes, you know, if you're gonna, yeah. I mean, that's a situation because of the potential toxicity and everything there that you need to have some kind of practical experience.
That company's gonna take all the liability for the accidents.
Yep.
Another thing that used to drive me nuts about this as well, you had this 5-year statute of limitations with experience.
With experience, yes.
So here I am with a PhD that I received 20 years ago. If I were to apply for a QP today, none of that counts. To me, that's pretty ridiculous.
Robert,
We know all about your short term.
Well, I know.
That was Dave Burns. Dave Burns. That was Dave Burns.
All right. Robert,
Actually, that's,
Vince, did you have anything in that regard? And again, I apologize. This is my fault. I didn't say, guys, we might get this far.
Just a couple things. It started with Anthony Banks' comment, and I think that, yeah, it's always this one. And I think that we're all there, we're just in different spots, if that makes sense. Mr. Banks mentioned employees for political subdivisions and how they're required to have a license, but there's no BL or QB. Yet we expect them to be licensed, and essentially, what is an employee of a political subdivision doing? They're essentially doing the same work as a QP or as a business. Their backing financially is the government. So when you really think about that, how logical is it then to even have a QP? If there were no QPs for employees of political subdivisions, but yet the legislature trusts them to do their job properly without supervision, just when you really think about that, then it tends to make us really question the validity of a QP. Is it that we want someone to train and supervise them, or is it that we're concerned about if they do something wrong, is there insurance in place in order to take care of it? I think that that's probably what the real issue is.
Just being a political subdivision, an ex-executive director tried to force political subdivisions at one time to have a QP and a business license. That process. It was nasty. People, a lot of these government agencies, we had meetings with ADOT, they actually here in this room, and several other people. Nobody wanted to go down that road whatsoever. And then you had a whole issue with liability, with insurance, where most of us are self-insured entities anyway. And I agree with you, Vince. There's no room for a QP in there, but I still like the idea of having somebody being a responsible party for all those people. I've seen too many city municipalities where people just operating willy-nilly with no direction whatsoever. I don't know how many school districts I've seen where people go out there with no supervision at all, really don't know what the heck they're doing. There needs to be somebody supervising, I suppose, kind of like what the QP does. For instance, with us, we've got 30 applicators, but my responsibility is I have to ensure that all the trucks are equipped properly. I have to ensure that all the pesticides are being stored correctly. I have to ensure that all the pesticide record keeping is being done. There has to be somebody that takes on that responsibility. And how do we verbalize that in a legal term? I'm not sure yet. So.
Dave Burns, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to, yeah, I lose my thought.
Hurry up, please.
Can't we just address that the same way we would address branch offices, which is a responsible party? It has to be an applicator that's licensed in the categories in which you're gonna do business, and he is the responsible party. If you need records, you go to my branch manager in Tucson and say, I need those records. Chris is the guy that you get those from. He's identified by the company as that person. He's just the go-to guy. And as the go-to guy, he has certain responsibilities to make sure that when Vince is the applicator, he turns in his invoice every day and I put it in the file.
John Bolts, how, and maybe there's differences in the law, and we might know, but like an ag, to satisfy requirements under the worker protection standard of different, both, we're notifying, particularly the worker protection standard, when a restricted use pesticide is applied, or even a general use pesticide is applied, we have to maintain those records to provide to employees that work on the premises. Not in a file somewhere. One of your inspectors comes out with me, they want to see the binder that's out where my employees can get to it, that's up to date. How do these applicators that work for a political subdivision, how are they satisfying that when there's hundreds of employees and students working at a school, and how does that? I mean, it's not the same as the worker protection standard, but when you're applying restricted use pesticides as far as record keeping and stuff like that, just curious.
Again, I think the difference is the work protection standard, where the work protection standard applies and where it doesn't apply. You know, farm, forest, nursery, greenhouse, that's where the work protection standard, having this information available for your employees. There's gonna be the, in your office spaces and things like that, you have to have the right to know stuff and the MSDS sheets and stuff like that. They would have that kind of information, but there is no comparable law under Office of Pest Management to the worker protection standard.
I don't want to create a paperwork mess for anybody. I mean, that book it takes effort to maintain it every day for the employees.
Why not? We have to do it.
Yeah.
This is not.
Well, but my point is just that even if there's a loophole here, I mean, we're talking about schools, we're talking about places where lots of employees are, as we're drafting this, and they think of some way, not to create a burden on industry or political subdivisions, but it seems logical that if a person's applying a restricted use insecticide, fungicide, herbicide on a school grounds or in an apartment building of public housing or whatever, that it would be logical that there would be something. I don't know.
Yeah, gentlemen, the reason why we do not have that requirement is, let's say I work for Maricopa County. I'm employed there for 3 years. No, let's say I'm employed there for a year. I've been applying RUPs for a year. Then I get terminated. What happens to those records? Do I give them to the next licensed applicator? Our current rules and statutes don't address that, whereas with a business license holder, we specifically state, hey, if you have these records, you have to hold them for, or maintain them for 3 years, or you have to maintain them for 5 years. Because we're looking at the business. So we don't look at the employees who maintain those records. But with the municipality, you don't have a business, so we don't know who to place that responsibility on.
I guess that's just my point, is that there's more at stake here than this. I don't know.
Well, I guess so that's what I'm kind of trying to understand is how it works. And I understand what you're doing in Maricopa County, and I presume that do you have a license?
Mm-hmm.
So you're the responsible party or
Not officially.
Really? Okay.
We don't have an official designation.
All right. So how about a school? I mean, are there schools where the janitor is grabbing some restricted use pesticide?
If they are a licensed applicator, yes.
So, but they have to be a licensed applicator.
Correct.
But what, I'm just wondering, but Vince, can you, I mean, just, the schools have been an issue, because that's one of the things that, again, I put off to the side here, because one of the things we have to be ensure is that, you know, that people don't, that we're not losing the kids in this whole thing. And I'm not looking at that as employees. I was thinking you're going to come at it from the kid standpoint. There's already a law that covers the kids in regard to keeping the labels and the MSDS stuff there for the pesticides.
There's notification rules, there's all kinds of
72-hour prior notification.
I think that an important thing is, instructional pest control, restricted use products are almost they're archaic, nobody uses them anymore.
Okay.
I mean, very little, if any.
Internal, okay,
Yeah.
inside, all right.
But I wonder if that's the case when it comes to like herbicides on grounds and things like that. Is that the case indeed there? Because
There's hardly any.
I mean,
There is, you know,
even in
there's-
ag, you don't use that many restricted use products anymore either.
Inside, there's a couple on the market, that's about it.
Yeah, Dave Burns, you know, when it comes specifically to schools, and even in our workplace, we do have specific worker protection laws. I'm not sure who governs them, but we have to have labels and MSDS sheets on everything from the window cleaner to WD-40, and they have to.
Everything that you apply? Everything that
It's
you
used
apply?
in an office. or
As
facility.
well as the stuff that's in our office to clean
Oh, I
the
see.
desk and
All right.
clean the copier and,
Yeah.
you know, spray the plants, you know. We have to have that as well, as what's in our chem room, as well as what's on our truck. And honestly, I've looked at the law and I can't see that your truck is significantly different than your office space. So if you don't have all those things in your truck, I'm guessing if you get into a bind, you're probably in trouble. So we make it a point to have that in our truck. When it comes to schools, schools have their own law. And I don't remember the number, but when it comes to notification, record keeping, posting, that's on the school law side of things.
Okay.
Ours just actually addresses that law in our law, correct, Vince?
Yeah, our laws are specific in some respects. The schools basically don't even care what you're going to apply. They want to know the date and the time, but our laws are specific because we want to know the specific product that you're going to apply. But as far as all the other laws, they're very similar under ARS 36, whatever, which is enforced by DHS, Department of Health Services.
Right.
Their law matches our law to a T, with the exception of the amendment product.
And that requires the school to post it a certain period of time before in a conspicuous place. It defines what an emergency is. It limits you to the application of any pesticide, herbicide, rodenticide. When students are on the premises, not on the premises, they do have their set of laws that address that, specifically in school and daycare.
Did you,
Starting to become clearer, I guess initially, the comments, I was kind of under the impression that, you know, the janitors out there, you know, okay, great, kids are on lunch break, you know, let's close this room down, yeah. And, but that's apparently not the case. And it sounds, I would think we could, look at as far as the record keeping aspect of it goes. I was thinking we could do something. I mean, if you have a license, if you're a licensed applicator, I've been under the scenario that unlicensed applicators let go, who keeps them? So I think that needs to be looked at.
Henry, you had your hand up quite well.
Henry Steiger again. In the case of a business, you require the business to keep records for a while. What do you do when the business dissolves? If the business dissolves, the records could just be dumped because the business no longer exists.
Unless there's a responsible party set up.
But the issue, I mean, you're right, your point is valid. The issue here, though, is a school, and, you know, it's a public place with young people, so it deserves the highest level of scrutiny and safety possible. So that's what got my attention.
And I think you have to have a distinguishing factor between a school as a political subdivision and Maricopa County as a political subdivision. They really, the school and the daycare, they have their laws. They have to have records, they have to post it, they have to do those things. Where his political subdivision doesn't have that responsibility because there's no law that addresses them.
Kirk, did you want to say something? You were
Just a comment, you know, we're kind of a unique position where we work in a lot of different cities and school districts in Maricopa County. And we would like to see pesticide records, unless those people contract with a private company, it's difficult to get that information. It's just not around. And I know when you leave reports in a house, for instance, you're leaving what you applied and how many pounds of active ingredient you applied in that particular situation. Trying to get information out of the school district or the city of Chandler or Gilbert or somebody, forget it. I would like to see something requiring those entities at least maintaining application records of what was applied under their jurisdiction.
Well, you go ahead, please.
Jimmy Fox, but then you get back to who's responsible. And then, the question needs to be asked, does an applicator then need to be held to a higher degree of responsibility than what we currently have? Do you have a need for the QP, or is that attached to the business license? So you gotta have that whole discussion in order to enforce
And
that.
that goes back to your original super applicant.
Make it the responsibility of the chief executive of that political subdivision or his designee, or her designee.
I think Vince was talking about, do you need, is the QP a super applicator, or is he the responsible person? At a golf course, you got a QP, they're probably the superintendent. Is he the responsible party for that golf course? Even though he's the QP? Man, that's probably the owner of that golf course. It should be the responsible, the holder of the business license. So, I mean, I took it as, do we even need a QP? If they're licensed applicator, do you need a QP? What are you trying to get out of the QP? Are you trying to get the responsible party, or are you trying to get the applicator?
Is there, maybe it's all over the board, but do you have a gut feel on that? Is it?
Well, I mean, it really depends. I mean, we've got schools who have QPs and business licenses because they want to have somebody right there responsible that's designated and says, okay, we have an issue, you're the person for it. And that's what they've designated, and they're like, we're not going away from it even though we don't have to have it. Then we have the other where they're like, they have somebody, but that person can change or is pretty interchangeable, and it's kind of across the board. So at least with political subdivisions, it really does vary. I mean, I know we've got cities that have business licenses and schools that have business licenses and QPs, and we have some that don't. So it gets left up to that organization to decide whether or not they want to have it. When you start dealing with political subdivisions within a business, I've got plenty of business licensees where the business licensee has the money and he wants to get into a business. He doesn't have any expertise. He doesn't know a pesticide, aside from a can of spray. However, he's got some money that he wants to get into a business. But he finds somebody who's got a license that he's going to have to qualify that business, and he's going to learn. He decides that he's going to learn, or he's just going to continue to pay somebody to do that. And so there is that difference there, as opposed to a mom and pop shop where it's just the three of them, and he's out applying during the day, gets home, does all his record keeping in the evening, and somebody takes care of his appointments and stuff. So it really does depend on the actual organization and how they're.
But is he hiring that QP to be his responsible party, or the guy that knows how to spray?
Typically, I mean,
I was thinking, he's still the responsible party.
Well, answer the question.
But again, it really depends on the type of, it depends on the type of business and you're dealing with as well. Because we have folks that, I'm running the business. I'm running the business side of it. I'm going to take care of financial responsibility, and I'm taking care of this, and I've got all this taken care of. I need you to be there to take care of your job and all the applicators that I'm going to hire. And so that person's responsible for all that side activity that comes in, and he lets his boss know, hey, this is what we have going on.
Yeah, but are they more concerned about the financial responsibility or the spraying of the
Sounds to me like it's more the technical aspect.
Yeah, which I would think is
the actual application.
Yeah, the QP is part of the, he's taking over the technical part of it.
So he's a super applicator.
Oh, he's an applicator.
He's a super applicator.
So QP is also responsible for training.
Okay, Henry, go ahead.
Okay, Henry Schneider. Let me give you yet another perspective, okay? As a property manager, I see no reason why I shouldn't be able to hire a licensed applicator and have him take care of all my application needs on all the buildings I manage. All right, I think that's a perfectly reasonable sort of thing to do. I should be able to hire a licensed applicator and have him spray the yard, have him treat for the weeds, have him kill off the bugs, do all the rest of the stuff that I need done in my buildings on a regular basis. I mean, that way, from me, my perspective, that way I've got one person. He knows all my buildings. He knows the history on the buildings. I don't have to worry about, next month I get somebody else who happened to wander through that particular company. I've always got the same person. I've got control over it. Got much better control than if I hire a pest control company.
Why can't you do that now?
He's saying not hire a company, he's saying.
I don't wanna hire a
person.
company, I wanna hire a specific person
They wanna hire
to do that.
somebody who's got the license and
If
the
they got a
financial
license.
responsibility.
They don't have a license, they're a licensed applicant.
See,
If you don't have a license, you
They're
can't do it.
certified.
because of the,
Seriously, I gotta have a license to spray on my farm, so.
I
if you're
understand.
asking for the ability to apply restricted use pesticides.
no,
without being
I have no
licensed.
use for restricted use pesticides, and I don't mind hiring a licensed guy to do it, okay? That's not the issue. The current structure means that I would basically have to start up a whole pest control company with all of the 3 different licenses in order to do pest control on the properties that I manage. And I don't want all that overhead. I just want to hire the guy, and I want him to do my work.
He's trying to get rid of me.
You want that done on your payroll, or you want?
Yes,
to
I'll
hire-
have him on my payroll. And, you know, I've got general liability insurance for my company. You know, I have to have that for all the other stuff I do anyway.
But if he gets an applicator's license, so we know he's trained and you have to maintain records, then where's the issue?
There is
And that's what we have to do now.
Exactly. And that's where I'd like to see this whole process go, so that they get rid of, 90% of the overhead. And, because in my opinion, it's not necessary.
Because there's circumstances.
I'm not, just make sure I'm hearing you right, Henry.
Okay?
You're saying you want to be able to hire a company,
No?
No.
I want to be able to hire
you just
An
want to hire an
individual.
applicator.
an applicator, a
Okay.
licensed applicator,
So,
to work for me.
for work for you in buildings you manage?
Yes.
Do you own the buildings?
Some of them I own, some of them I don't own. Some of them I manage under contract.
Who manages them?
Right.
Basically, talking about the scenario like we have under ag, John Bolt's, where it's private, where you have your private applicator, or
You have an applicator that works for you.
You're a private applicator on the ag side,
You're the
as opposed to the commercial.
certified, yeah, okay.
Go ahead, Dave.
I
You're right,
just have a couple.
applicator than
just
certified.
Versus the customer commercial.
Go ahead, Dave.
Dave Burns. I just have a couple of issues with that. It all listens real good and simple. I just own a building and I just want someone to spray it. You're not talking about the farm that you own, that you don't have to worry about who lives on the farm. You've got to worry about what's grown on the farm and that. That's a little different than 100 or 200 or 1,000 people living in an apartment complex that you have no idea what they do. They could run a daycare, they could be elderly, they could deal with bed bugs, they could deal with hygiene issues. There's a lot of issues out there that you don't know about in any kind of an apartment community or businesses that employ lots of people. The other thing is general business policies typically do not cover pesticide applications. They might cover general business, general insurance business policies. Typically do not cover pesticide applications or problems that occur from pesticide applications. Now, this is not to say that you can't buy those policies. You can, but typically they don't have that. So the complexity of dealing with properties which you do not own and reside at becomes very, very complex. And I don't think from a public interest standpoint, that's something we want to take lightly and say, oh yeah, just hire some guy to take care of that problem.
And Will Russo, and I agree, but I'm not suggesting it be taken lightly. I'm just saying that as long as the person that's going to do this is required to have a license, has to have continuing education hours, there's records kept, then I don't see where that's taken lightly.
Which is all the responsibility of a pest control business.
Sure.
And I would have no problem if a property management company chose to get into the pest control business. That wouldn't bother me a bit. Same laws, same rules as what I do or anybody else does in the structural pest control business.
Agreed.
Kevin, you've been sitting patiently?
Well, I don't know that I have a whole bunch to add, but I'm going to stand up because I can't see this out in the room from where I'm sitting. Kevin Ather, general contractors, termite pest control. I've been doing this since 1972. I started in high school. so this isn't my first rodeo. You know, we have, since I entered industry, there has always been a qualifying party or an operator that has to prove that they have X amount of hours of practical field experience. I don't think with what we do, it can all be learned through books. You have to get out and have practical field experience. So what I've heard is about categorizing hours of requirement. I'm not opposed to that. You probably have to have a stronger test if you're going to gas buildings, fumigate, than perhaps doing another task or trade. I don't think that any of us as taxpayers would say, you know what, that guy's a pretty good form setter. Let's let him go out and build a bridge on the 101 freeway without the benefit of a general contracting license. So perhaps what you need to address is maybe you want to eliminate the business license and go to registering an office, and then make the QP the business license for the qualifying responsible party for the business. But I don't like it when I hear super applicator or applicator. You are going to open up the door, the floodgates in this economy for every Tom, Dick, and Harry to go down to Home Depot and buy a 1-gallon jug and put it in the back of his Ranger and say that he's a pest control operator because he's got an applicator. And you will not have the manpower to ensure that they have the proper insurance and that you are appropriately protecting the public. And now I'm going to throw this one out. Why not have public subdivisions be licensed?
That's right. If I might, can I ask you a question?
And the comment was, they don't have to be licensed because they're financially secure. Yeah, nowadays? Really?
Kevin, there's a question for you.
Would you be opposed to dramatically lowering the number of hours that you had to have of experience to be a QP?
I think 3,000 hours now. If you do 40 hours a week in a 50-hour work week, that's about a year and a half. Is my math correct?
Yeah.
It's 75 40-hour weeks.
Pardon?
75 40-hour weeks.
So then, year and a half. Yeah, I'm not opposed to lowering the, I mean, if you want to do like 2,000 hours for termite.
I don't have any idea.
Yeah.
And I agree with the thesis.
And I think that's for your discussion.
Yeah.
I don't have a problem.
Well, I'm asking you because you have a lot of experience, obviously. And again, if we were dealing with the ag laws, then I'd want you to ask me. But so that's the only thing I'm asking is what's your opinion, personal opinion.
I'm a licensed fumigator in 2 states, and I don't practice fumigating currently, but to fumigate a structure, that is, I mean, to me, that's really a lot of liability. You gotta have folks there that really know what they're doing. You gotta have a QP that's willing to supervise that activity. To perform pest control and do that efficiently, they need to be called to the same task. I wouldn't think so. I think that you can teach pest control in a shorter period of time.
Yeah. All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. Okay, Phyllis?
Phyllis Ferranga, Pest Tank is our term. I was in a very unique situation in New York, and I hold a couple of licenses. But it was a work-study program, and we would work, when we go into university, at the time I started university, you needed a 2-year degree to get a pest control license, which is a little absurd. But we used to go into the lab, get our lecture, and then go out and get a weekend of training with the full cooperation of all the industries, whether it be large, small, Department of Health, government. We have to go out and get about 48 hours of logical on-hands training, go back into the labs with Dr. Frischman, and go back and forth in that manner. But it was full cooperation of the industry, and we only required like 48 hours, I think, in each category to get the on-hands with the drill, the logic, with one of their top technicians is has them work it out on the weekends. And
Did you pay for that?
I did, yes.
Yes, I mean, and you paid the university something as well?
Oh, yeah, it was a tuition.
Okay.
But the way it was set up is we were a giant work pool, and this is the good thing about the industry itself. They could pick from the top 10 students that came out of that program. But again, we were already groomed, we already had the knowledge when we came out. The industries that cooperated with us, the health department, whatever. I mean, I remember going to the sewer systems of New York. That was one of my first jobs, you know, and I got shocked. But again, the other industries, Arrow, Exterminating, Orphan, had picked of the top students coming out of that program. But the industry cooperated to give us the practical experience, which was, I believe, 48 hours, and everybody was satisfied. And so some kind of system like that, where there's no 3,000 hours, just the weekend with a good operator from an industry.
Thank you. Robert?
Excuse me, Kevin. My name's Bob Wagner. I'm with Wagner Pest Solutions. We're a family-run business out of Phoenix. And I was listening to Kevin, who, over the last 10 years, I've always called him the super applicator, so if you guys made that a designation, I feel proud. I kind of feel like you guys are devaluating the QP, and I think it's kind of getting lost in semantics. I think that I do a lot for my business. One of the things that I don't do is spray. I don't apply baits. I don't spray anymore. I don't crack and crevice. I don't fog. I don't do termite jobs. I don't have to do that anymore. I have employees that do that. But like Dave, because my business is, the demographic of my business is very similar to what Dave's is. I'm very involved in the daily operation of my business. I set protocols. I have people that work underneath me that help me to establish protocols for the business, and I have that responsibility. And I'm responsible for every one of my applicators that goes out there. And to make it as simple as to have somebody have 12 hours of experience to go out there and, like Kevin said, buy a jug, go to Home Depot, buy some Roundup, and start killing weeds at somebody's house, to me, it's kind of doing a big disservice to the general public. It really is, and I think that we have a responsibility in our industry to make it. I'm probably the opposite of everybody in this room. I want it to be more difficult to get this business.
Yes.
I want more regulation. I want things to be a little bit tougher. It's too easy right now.
You're willing to pay for that?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And the only reason I ask for that is you know, people are asking for, you know, fee reductions, getting rid of the tar fee and stuff like that. In order to continue with a strong regulatory program, we have to be able to bring in the resources to continue to do that. And the only way we do that is through the fee system.
Well, I think just like with anything, if we're going to pay for it, we'd like to get something for what we're paying. So if we see that that's there, and it is a little bit harder, and we're paying a little bit more for it, to me, it's worth it because it's going to eliminate some of these guys that are out there doing bed bug treatments at these apartment complexes that have no clue what they're doing. Because Dave and I see it every day.
Do you have, just a question that kind of along with what Will had asked earlier, do you see, actually, if you said it when you got up, Kevin, I think is what I heard you say, is, do you see the ability to differentiate, so to speak? You mentioned the weed category, having lesser requirements than...
Well, I just think that once you're a QP, once you've established the right, that you say, hey, I have so many hours in this industry. I've taken the test that you've given me for the hours that I've mastered. Now I should have the ability to broaden my business. Why is the state handcuffing me and keeping me from being able to do other things inside this business that I want to do?
But I don't think that's what he's saying. My question was that I can see the thesis or understand Kevin's point about that if you're going to fumigate buildings, that certainly needs a lot more experience and proof of ability than going and spraying Roundup out in somebody's backyard.
Right.
And so that's what I was asking is that something that the industry would be accepting of to have varying levels? And I don't know how complicated we're going to end up wanting this to be, but but I got to tell you, I see your point. But then I'm also hearing people talking about how difficult it can be, despite the math that it's a year and a half, 40-hour weeks, to get that 3,000 hours. And this is still American, there shouldn't be a huge barrier to entry in getting into business.
But there also has to be a level of competency to get into the business. And
Agreed.
I don't know that a year and a half, to me, I don't know if a year and a half's enough. Because we've got guys that have a year and a half worth of experience that are opening up their doors and doing things that, I've been doing this not as long as Kevin, but since 1984.
There's, go ahead, Dave, and then,
Go ahead.
no, you go ahead.
Okay. Dave Burns, I just want to address a couple of things. I think that you make a lot of great points, and I think that sometimes we slight the business of structural pest control by saying it's Roundup. I could buy it at Home Depot. You know what? It'll still kill you. Read the label. I'm sorry, it will. You apply it in the wrong situation, you will hurt someone. I think what a license does is proves that you have the knowledge, the ability, and the financial position to protect the public in what you do. No different than agricultural people applying a herbicide and not having to be responsible for the subdivision next door to it. That would be ludicrous to think, oh, we don't need to worry about that. We don't need to worry about here. Well, in our business, we have to worry about what somebody does in an apartment. It's their residence. They could be a daycare. It could be a mom that has, children that are highly allergic to certain pesticides. If you've got a week's worth of knowledge, you're probably not going to know that. Kevin's got a fumigation license, but I'd be willing to bet you right now, if I called Kevin and said, Kevin, I got right with termites, can you come fumigate my house? He'd go, yeah, right. I don't think so. You're not.
Actually, would I give you a quote and bring a crew
The point being, he's smart enough to know, hey, I don't practice fumigations every day. I'm not going to jeopardize life and limb to go do that. But he has a license to do it. He could do it if he wants to. He's smart enough. I think people get hung up on 3,000 hours. I pondered this one, not digging holes, but riding bikes. I tend to do a lot of that. Where did the 3,000 hours come from? I remember back when it used to be a year or 2 years experience, whatever it was. I think this is just mulled into this 3,000 hours, which I don't know if the 3,000 hours is a good requirement or a bad requirement. I think it's an impossible measuring tool. It's impossible. You guys want to see 3,000 hours of experience verifiable from me for my employee? I got news for you. You know how much paperwork that is for me? It is astronomical for me to go back and figure out, did this guy get 3,000 hours of experience in this category? It is almost impossible for me to do, and he's my employee. So I can feel for you on what yours. I don't think we should get hung up on 3,000 hours. I think we should be looking at what do we really want to measure the experience to be, and I think the testing needs to be the critical thing. I don't think to apply herbicides in a non-school or non-daycare situation in an exterior environment that you need to have some 3,000 hours of experience to apply Roundup or Surfland in that application. But again, if I call Kevin and say, I want my structure fumigated, and he hasn't done a fumigation in Arizona in how long, does everybody kind of see where I'm going with that? It's not, he's able to do it by licensing, but practically, is he really capable of doing it?
Before you sit down, I want to make sure Robert gets a chance to...
I can give you the 3,000 hours versus, prior to 2003, the requirement was you had to be licensed for 2 years within the last 8. And so but the problem we ran into is you would get folks that would show up and, yeah, I've had a license since 2002. I don't qualify for the 3,000 hours, but I couldn't qualify for 2 years. So what it did is they said, okay, what we'll do is we'll say 3,000 hours. So that's a year and a half. That's less than the 2 years that you're required to be licensed. That's where the 3,000 hour came from.
Was that an active license, inactive? Did it differentiate?
Actually, it didn't say. It wasn't specific. You had to be licensed for 2 years. And that was one of the things, and I think one of the reasons that the commission at the time agreed to go with it is we would get office staff that was coming in, and that office staff that was verifying for each other. Business went out of business, but the folks still wanted to work, and so, okay, well, I was a supervisor here, so I'm gonna verify that you had 3,000. You know what? Maybe the office manager, I'm gonna verify that you had the 2,000, or you were licensed for 2 years. And so, I think the commission said, okay, we gotta figure out something else, because you can have a license for 2 years and never touch a pesticide. And so I said, okay, we'll come with this. You have to have 3,000 hours of verifiable experience. Somebody has to say that you've done this. It's not that you've held this license. That's where the 3,000 hours came from. It looks like we're gonna, looks like we're trying to go back the other way now. We kind of went one way, and now we're kind of going the other way. And the contention was, we'll make it less amount of time, but you have to show, you have to have something to show for it.
Yeah, I've heard two things. I think we need to be able to have, I've heard testing. We need to show that people are able to test. But I don't think anybody's given up on this experience, but it's got to be something that we can deal with. I mean, it's got to be something that people can get at, so. Okay, you still have the floor, so I'm gonna let you finish and then.
Can I just
Yes.
cover one or two more things? The inactive status that you guys were talking about earlier, as a family-run business, the advantage to having somebody that's inactive, if something happens to me. My
Well, you
son's
can keep the
13.
license, it's just, we're not saying it's inactive, it's just, you're licensed.
Well, I understand, but if I'm not here, if I'm 6 feet under, I can be licensed to haul, and it's not gonna matter. I'm talking about.
But in that scenario, why couldn't someone else?
So you're saying license the
who is
business,
licensed?
not
Yeah.
license the
No.
individual?
I'm not
But
saying
actually, that person would have to be a QP. And that's, I think, we're trying to come up with something for an inactive QP
Right.
versus an inactive applicator. I think that's where that.
Well, that's a very good, that's the crux of the issue here, in my mind, is that, yeah, there's a huge barrier to entry in the event of your untimely passing, then who becomes the QP? It's your business.
Right.
And again, I got my ag hat on, I can have somebody else go be a certified applicator, relatively quickly, so that's not an issue for us. And yet, we make thousands of applications safely all the time.
And
We don't do it inside. We're not fumigating buildings, we're fumigating ground.
We do it for food.
We do it to food, yeah, there is that.
Well, one of the main reasons I brought it up is what we talked about a few minutes ago, was that as a QP, as being in this industry, as long as I've been in the industry, I want to start spraying weeds. And I can't unless I find somebody that has an inactive QP that wants to run it to me.
All right, thank you.
And that needs to change.
Okay?
I have to go back again. I have a commercial license, I had to take a written test first, and then I had to do a practical test in front of an inspector, where I actually went out, showed them all the safety features of the truck, got in the truck and actually drove the truck. Since we had inspectors, why not have a test, a written test? Once that person passes that written test, then he goes on to a practical test, an on-site test where the inspectors, 3, whatever amount you choose, are out there witnessing this particular individual actually go through the procedures of whatever category that individual wants to be licensed in.
So if we adopt that, what you just suggested, and either drastically reduced or eliminated the QP position, would that be okay with you?
I would still want that individual to have some hours even before they took the test. Some hours in, as far as classroom hours, as far as taking the test. But then we want to find out, does that person have the practical experience
that goes
to actually
to your point that, if he goes out there and he gets out his Home Depot can and a bottle of something and is kind of fumbling with it, then it doesn't matter if he passed the test. He shouldn't go into somebody's home.
I think testing is really important.
I agree.
I think the one thing that I want to throw out here is if we went along that line, we have to look at it in 2 scenarios. One of them is we would have to contract with somebody to actually do that. And Phil has talked about, the university did it in New York. Or we would have to charge enough. I mean, you'd get charged for it, whoever did it. If we contract with somebody, they'd charge you to do it. Or we would have to charge enough so that we could fund a position or the manpower resources in order to do that. And I don't think that would be cheap. I mean, we don't state.
I just heard the industry say they want that, so they've got to be willing to pay for that.
Yeah.
That's it, right there.
So,
That's it.
all right. Vince, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I just had a quick solution for something that Bob had mentioned, because I keep hearing this inactive QP. Here's the solution for inactive, the word inactive. All inactive means is that you're currently not qualifying the company. So you can have an inactive QP. The inactive QP doesn't mean that your license is inactive. If Burns is the QP for Burns, and I also have a QP license, I'm called inactive QP because Dave is currently in charge right now. If Dave happens to leave, now I stepped in that position, now I'm the active QP. See, so if we just associate the word inactive with QPs, meaning that you can have multiple QPs, but only one can qualify a company at a time, then you can still keep that title.
Vince,
And you'll find most larger companies have just that.
But you still have to maintain all the requirements. that-
Absolutely.
you still have to.
I think that's what people were kind of going, holy schmoly about that.
Yeah, you have to have the continuing education has to be kept up like you were at.
Okay,
Honestly, I didn't know that was.
okay, we'll do it. Kirk, go ahead.
Just one more quick comment on the testing part of it. Having been on the committee that reviewed and helped rewrite the current exams, personally, I think the licensed applicator exam is absurdly easy. I would like to see that go away and possibly stick with the questions used in the qualifying part of the exam. That would bring a level of competence more into the industry. It would give me a better indication of whether a person's really got experience in this or not. That's just my,
What's passed, isn't it about 80%?
it's pretty high.
Yeah, it's not,
I thought it was over 70, a little over.
I have it, but the exams are not that difficult.
Okay, all right, appreciate
If
it.
we're gonna look at the exam part of it as being a level of competency and experience, we need to step up to the plate and make those more accountable.
Okay, all right, thank you. I think this has been a really good discussion, personally. We still have a long way to go. So, I'm going to move down to item number 6, which is the next meeting date, and I guess I would like to, we have these things that I've got down. I've got this criminal background check, I've got the QP, and I've got the TARFs, and I've also got the enforcement matrix discussion, and just so Henry doesn't think it's lost in here, I think, this whole QP discussion and everything, your housing stuff will be part of that discussion, so.
That's fine.
Okay, so I guess what I would propose to do is I would like to set these for our next meeting as the topics of discussion. And I'm gonna list them all. It doesn't mean we're gonna get through them all, but I'm gonna list them all, and it'll be similar to this. It took us 2 meetings to kind of get through all the laws of OPM to see where they would fit. And this next one, we'll start going through these categories, and it'll probably, it may not take us more than 1 meeting.
Just
go ahead.
a thought or a suggestion or comment,
Yes.
depending on how you take it. I would think at the next meeting, some if not all of those subjects that you talked about, we ought to finish the discussion on those and have a conclusion and check them off the list and move forward.
Yes, that would be great. Okay?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm sorry,
Yes.
one more thing.
Okay.
I also would like to hear more from industry, because there's a little bit of an interesting dynamic emerging that before this task force was formed, there was lots of conversation that came Ag's way about that the industry was overregulated, overtaxed, overfees, it's hard to get in. And that was the vibe that we got from the legislature, rather I should say I got from the legislature. And now I'm hearing the industry saying, no, we want, if not the same regulation, maybe even more regulation. And we don't mind paying fees. And I guess as a non-educated person, well, I mean, that's definitely, I'm getting a mixed message here. And, I'm glad to be part of the decision, but I need to know what the true deal is before we can make the decision and move forward.
Okay. Just add to it. Do we have any small operators here? Because we've got,
I know, yeah, there's 3.
Several of them are small.
3 hands for that.
So,
Craig Allen.
and I, go ahead, Craig, I'm gonna let you.
And mine's Craig Allen for Arizona, and I think you need to segment, some of this. I mean, the pest control guys, what they need to do and what they need to regulate by, that probably needs to stay pretty close to what it is. but you got a golf course. I mean, these guys hire, and I know for a fact, and it's not legal, but they hire QPs, pay these guys, the guys ain't on the golf course, and, I mean, so you can do the same thing there that we do in agriculture. They have a private applicator that's certified and educated, and, you know, I think you need to segment some of this stuff away from the pest control deal to the schools and the deal.
And actually, that thank you, Craig. Somebody actually, we kind of had a little blurb, little poppet of that at a previous meeting. Is in looking at does the golf course weed control fit best under Office of Pest Management requirements, or would it fit better under agriculture? Yeah. Right away, does it fit currently where it is, or should it be under agriculture? That was kind of a discussion. So I thank you for the reminder on that. So, okay, Henry
Schmecker again. Before you draw too many conclusions just on, hearing 3 different people talking, calling them the industry, there are thousands of people who, I think it's what, 1,200, 1,100 licenses, that involve, like a lot of small businesses. And unfortunately, they're out working today, and they don't have the time necessarily to drive up to Phoenix and give presentations. So I've talked to a whole lot of small people, and they definitely don't represent some of the views that you've heard here today as far as wanting more regulation. They want a lot less regulation. And so...
But you realize that, I mean, we all have jobs, we all have other places we need to be, and if they don't come and have their voice heard here, then how can we, with all due respect, I'm not going to take your word for it.
Right?
We'll fix that.
That's fine.
We'll work on getting more of them here, or getting them to
Yeah, because this doesn't represent us right here.
But they're representing themselves, and they have
Yes.
that right, so we have to listen to them. So.
and Dave,
we're glad to listen to them.
I take offense. I think I represent a lot of people.
Get over it.
I might not represent you,
Get over
your
it.
views, that's okay. I do represent a lot of people. So the other thing I'd recommend, and I will, I'll donate my time. If you want to take it on the road, I'll represent this committee on the road. I'll go to Tucson, I'll go to Yuma. If you send, you can send Vince, I'd ride with him. If you wanted to do something as a town hall in those areas, I'll donate my time to represent this group and bring back the feedback.
I think that would be good.
Again, we need industry to be heard, but it has to be in a reasonable amount of time.
And there is a legitimate group of people out there that are 1, 2 truck operators that it is difficult to get out of here in the middle of the day.
But we could do 5:30, 6 o'clock at night type meeting or something?
Absolutely, I would be here.
And then we let everybody know, so these small mom and pop operations, and again, if you can help get the word out and everything.
We'll do that. We'll get the other 1,200 that couldn't make it.
Okay, all right. Okay, now we'll go to setting the next meeting. Okay, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Mine's completely on a different topic, but
Stand
I
up and
certainly
introduce
wanted
yourself.
my name is Jake Kinman, and I'm here on behalf of the Arizona Pest Professionals Organization.
Okay.
And mine is more of just an announcement that we've created a listserv for the organization. The idea is to try to have a community town hall type of forum for professionals to send any questions or comments or concerns about industry issues. So I just wanted to let you know it's email-based right now. Our goal is to have it actually on our website. Again, a virtual town hall forum to discuss these issues, and we'll certainly want to share these issues with the department.
Thank you. And actually, that reminds me, I jumped on to item number 6, and we have item number 5 before that. I apologize.
I thought we'd already done that.
No, well, I want to make sure we're engaging the members here, but this is the opportunity for those in attendance, which if there's something that is not on the agenda that you would like to have the advisory count or the task force address at some future meeting that pertains to what we're doing, this is your opportunity to get up and speak. So I open up the floor now to anyone else in attendance that would like to get up and speak.
Are we going to be discussing, I don't know because I wasn't at the first meeting, the landscaper's exemption as far as unlicensed landscapers who are out there applying into it? You already,
Yes.
No, we're gonna do.
It's part of the discussion.
Okay,
Yeah,
wait.
it's coming up.
Because it's unenforceable, right? It's problematic right now, so.
yeah, very much so.
Okay, all right. Next meeting, thank you. We're looking at November, I assume. So,
Are we back to the 3-week schedule, we're going 4?
let's go 4. Just my time seems to be disappearing. 15th? 15th works for me. Does Tuesday, November 15th work for most folks?
It does not work for me, but that's okay.
Still
I don't, Lynn hates Tuesdays. Is Wednesday better for you, Lynn?
Wednesday's great.
Does Wednesday work for you, John?
Yeah, I have an expert wellness research council meeting that day, so that's already set. Wednesday we covered 16.
The 16th? Does that work for people?
Okay.
I'm
good.
Okay. 16th then? And we put the at 10 o'clock again? 10 a.m.? And we'll just put the brief notice up on our website saying that the meeting is there, but it isn't the official notice, it just says this is the date the meeting's gonna occur. And I will check into the email, because it appears that nobody got an email on this meeting that got on that listserv, that no one received a notification of that. So I'm gonna check into that. So we'll do it, the next meeting will be November 16th at 10 a.m. here. So thank you everybody for coming and providing your input and spending your precious time. I appreciate it very much. We'll see you next month. Dave, I will go with you.
I should be.
We're gonna do that.